Okay, let's get started. Today I'm building a Soarer converter for vintage IBM keyboards. We have a printed case, Pro Micro, 2 LEDs, one red, one green. Those will be our lock and caps lock and num-lock lights. And then matching resistors, I think they're 220 milliohm. Some heat shrink tubing, I don't know if we'll even use that. And then for our PS2 connectors, this is a cheap, like $1 cheap USB conversion cable from random seller on AliExpress. So cheap stuff. A couple bucks here, like less than $10 for the whole thing. And you can be up and running in no time, have a fully programmable vintage board. So basically we're going to cut the end, one of these ends off of this thing, strip the leads, wire those to the Pro Micro, add the LEDs, and we'll be done. It's no big deal. The Pro Micro's already flashed. I'll probably do a follow-up video at some point that shows, you know, the flash procedure and how to do it on Windows and maybe Linux too. So we're just going to get started here. Just going to take the nippers and knock that right off of there. Set the rest aside. I'll use that other one to make another one later, the other PS2 connector. And so basically what I'm going to do here is the wire will come in this way, so I'll just basically line that up with the back end of the case so I know I have plenty of wire to get to the other end, and I will mark it right there. I gotta grab something. I'll just use the knife here to give it a little nip, and that way I can see where I need to roll it. And I lost it already. Let's see here. There it is. Very hard to see. So basically I'm just going to put a little bit of pressure on this and roll it until I'm through that outer casing. You can kind of feel it give as you go. And then we're just going to slide that off. You don't want to nick those inside wires if you can help it. Looks like I might have. Yes, I did. See, that's no good. So I actually sliced one of them. That's no good at all. So plan B there, right? We'll just bring this right up to the end and not worry about it, because really the smaller it is the better. So right about there, and we'll try again. I would have preferred to have a longer cord on it, but I messed up already. It's been 2 minutes. So I'll be a little more judicious with my cut this time. And we'll get it out of there without destroying it. It doesn't want to let go. There it goes. So now we have clean wires this time. That's good. I'll nip off those unneeded ends. We'll set them aside. And then we're left with 4 wires in here. Basically we have red and black, which are going to be our 5-volt and ground, and then we have a clock, and what's the other one? The data line. And so that's all you need for the converter to work. Everything else is gravy, so adding the LEDs is a couple more solder joints, but it's easy peasy. So I'm just going to go ahead and strip these at the 22 gauge setting is the smallest one on this. So we'll knock those off. And I'm just going to take about, I don't know, 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch on each one of these. So we're left with our bare leads. If we get that to focus, I don't know. Camera doesn't want to focus there. In any case, we're going to take these. I've got a little bit of paste flux here. We're going to dip those and then twist the ends of each of them. And we're just going to tin them. I'm going to fire up the iron now. And that's set to about 750. somewhere in there, 740-ish. And I put a fairly small tip on the iron. It's a small conical tip. I prefer a chisel tip, but it's what I have. So I'm just going to grab a bit of solder. The tip is new, so it kind of needs to be primed a little. And we will just tin that end so we're not getting a bunch of fraying. This will help us get it cleanly into the Pro Micro. I am a firm believer in the value of flux, especially paste flux. The solder just leaps off the iron onto your work, and that is really nice. There we go. 4 wires tinned in a few seconds. Just put that back. Now, one thing we do have to check is the polarity on all this. So basically, if we look here, this is my instruction sheet, or my cheat sheet, I should say. So it marks out the 4 locations, plus I added marks for the control lights. You can do a scroll lock light as well, but I really just wanted to keep the case to 2 lights. No one uses scroll lock for anything anyway, so what's the point, really? And you know, and then down here we've got our PS2 connector, and this is as viewing the outlet on the machine. So we're actually going to be, you have to think reverse of that. So from this side around, and we're going to test all these with the multimeter quick to make sure that we are, you know, getting our lines straight. We'll probably do that first, and then there's no question what needs to go where, and I'll mark it on the sheet. So I'm just going to do a continuity check. I'm going to grab a, see if I can find a pin. There we go. Sorry if the table's shaky. It's pretty annoying. I'm going to have to come up with a better way to keep this table from moving. And then we need a pen. So, all right, going right around the ring here. Let's see. First thing is to check our meter and make sure it's going to beep for us. So when you're on continuity check, it's basically just checking to see if 2 things are connected. Gives you a tone. And if you've never done this before, on the multimeter, it's the little arrow with the plus sign, usually down here at the bottom right. I gotta print a new back end for this thing. It keeps falling apart. And so basically, we're gonna say, according to this thing, our ground should be this plug on the left-hand side when you're looking at it. That should be the black wire. Or not. Am I getting any? Oh, that's the red. Am I looking at that correctly? So, now see, this is showing, this is lining up with what's in the image here. So rather than reverse it, I'm going to follow that exactly. So red is 5 volt. Okay. So directly across from that should be our black. Yep. And then data will be down and to the right. That'll probably be green. No, I think that's white. No, I'm wrong. So green is our data line. We're just going to mark that. So data is green, which means clock is white. And we'll just double check the clock to make sure it's where we expect it. So basically I'm just pushing this in here firmly and we're getting a tone on that. So we're good there. We'll turn the multimeter off and we'll be good to start soldering these. Now I have my helping hands here. And I've got one side that has tubing over the Pro Micro, just keep it a little bit more protected. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it around this way. And that'll hold it nicely for us while we make these marks. So we'll just start with the ground and work our way back. Actually, yeah, that's the way to do it because I'm right-handed, so we want to work this way as we go. And I may, let's see, how does that work? I want to do this from the back side, so we're going to flip her over. And take that second ground. The diagram has, there's two grounds side by side. I'm going to take the one that's further forward for this. Actually, no, I might not. We're going to put a little bit of flux. I'm just going to put it on my finger and kind of wipe it across these contacts. And then when we're done, we'll clean that all up with some rubbing alcohol. So, black pin is in place. I'm just going to take our iron, give it a little clean, a little solder. And that's all it takes. Okay, next one is PD1, which is the clock line. The clock is white. So we've got that's marked as 2. Okay. It's the number 2 spot, even though it's PD1. It can be confusing. I need a fume extractor. Yes, I know this is terrible for my health, thank you. It looks a little dry. Just trying to see if we're getting nice solid connections here. Look, the first one, the ground looks a little bit low, so I'm going to just add a little bit of solder to that one. I should have done this in the opposite order. So that'd be working left to right, like I said, but I kind of messed that up. And it's not beautiful, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not getting like a nice little mount. I don't like these round tips. I like chisel tips. They hold the solder in place better. Probably when I'm done with this video, I'm going to grind a flat spot on the end of this. This should not take this much effort. There, we got a better mound that time. I like to just have a little pile of solder at the bottom for a little bit of physical strength against pulling through. Now right now the wires are leaning into each other. You have to be careful of that. You know, you don't want things touching when you go to fire it up, but we're going to nip these off once we're clear of that. I'm just checking on the stream here to make sure everything's working right. I am new to this. So, I'm really not confident in my streaming abilities, but the only way you learn is by doing, at least for me, and so let's just get it done, right? So basically these three are going right in a row from ground and then tabs, pins 2 and 3. So 3 will be our data line, that's the green one. And I'll just slide her into place like that. Clean that tip up. I really hate this tip. There it goes. And maybe it's just a technique thing. I'm not used to using it. Might just need some practice. Could use a little bit more solder. I'm not getting enough. I think I have to put it up higher on the tip and let it flow down. Yeah, that seems to be the ticket. Now I'm going to get too much because I'm going to snip that off. Okay. Now, we just need a 5-volt line yet, and this part of it will be done. VCC is on the other side here. That's your positive line, so we're going to put that right in there. It's a trick when you have big fingers. These things are tiny. At least for me. Doesn't help either, my eyes are terrible. Waiting on new glasses. Too much solder. This tip is probably more appropriate for like SMD mount stuff, surface components, whatever you want to call them. I'm no expert, but there we go. So we got nice clean solders on all those, good clean joints. I'm going to take a pair of nippers here and just cut all these down to the surface pretty well, leaving a little nub, but not anything huge. And certainly we want to make sure they are not touching one another. Yeah, that's good. Not my prettiest work, but it'll it'll hang. So essentially at this point, that is a functional source converter. Not pretty, but it should work. So the next step is to get these two LEDs in place. They're pretty straightforward. Basically, we're going to use A2 and A1. So A1 is number lock, A2 is caps lock, and the colors really don't matter, they're arbitrary. So I've got green and red, it could be blue and white, could be anything you want. I just chose these because A, I had them, and B, they take the same value resistor. So if you're not familiar with LEDs, you have to have a resistor with them, otherwise they'll burn out. And so you have to pair your resistor value to the LED. And since these take the same value, it just makes it easy, you know. So anyway, basically what we're going to do is we're going to wire the resistor right to the positive terminals, and then wire those to the LEDs, and then the negative will get soldered together and we'll share a line back to the Pro Micro. So I think I'm going to put these on the bottom side of it, just so the wiring is kind of separated between the two sets. So what, A1, 2, okay. So we're going to do A2 first, and I'm going to solder this one in at a 90-degree angle to the board so that we can keep the two sets of wires as separate as possible. And just like that, and I'll use that to hold it. I am going to take my knife here and just get a little bit of flux in there. Make sure we get nice, pretty connections. And we're good to go on that. There we go, that's much better looking. I think we're getting closer to a happy place with that. Now we'll take our other one, and we're going to do the same thing, but I'm just going to bend it in a slightly different direction so that they don't want to touch each other. And again, I will use this to pinch it down and hold it flat to the board. Really, this could go straight like that. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to grab a pair of pliers, excuse me, and we're going to put a nice 90-degree on that, and then we'll get a little bit of a crisper motion to it. I don't know if that's the word I'm looking for, but you get the idea. So basically, I'm just bringing the resistor slightly into the center of the board so that I'm not over top of the other connections. I'll probably put a piece of tape under that or something when we're assembling here, just to make sure nothing wants to touch. And again, with a little bit of flux, I'm going to try and move this a little closer to the center for you, easier to see. Really, I guess I need to look at maybe getting a closer, or at least a more adjustable camera setup so that I can get in there where you can see it a little better. We'll figure it out. That looks nice. There we go, that part is done. Now I'm going to let those on there for the moment, and we're going to figure out in our case here, this guy will sit like this. So I'm going to bring that up where you can see here. So that'll sit flat. The LEDs lay in these channels right here, and then this main wire is going to go right out through the back there. So what we need to do is come up with a length that makes sense for these LEDs. I'll probably do this one that's on the closer side here first, and just try and get an idea of how far down I want to cut it. Now the trick to LEDs, if you've never done this, if you look at it end on, there's always one spot that's ground flat. That's your negative side. Okay, so it's the shorter lead generally, but if you have one that's already clipped for some reason, or it's broken or something, your shorter lead is your negative, and it'll always align to that flat spot. So the resistors we're going to positive, so we want to mate those connections we just made to that longer wire. And so basically I'm going to lay this on here, and then I'm going to grab a Sharpie, and we're just going to mark approximately where that lines up. It's not going to have to be super exact, but it couldn't hurt. So really, I think I could probably take a pair of clippers, where are they, and just do this in place. Whoa, sorry, I bumped the camera. My apologies. There we go. And I can just knock this off right here. So I can see the mark I made there. I'm just going to go ahead, chop that off, and then basically that lines up with just about the bottom of the back of the LED, a little bit short of that. So man, I might even be able to solder that in place there. That would be cool. I think I can do that, hopefully without melting the case. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of put those together like that. I want to flip the LED over so that the negatives are in the center and I can run them down the middle of the back side. And then we're going to just lay those together like so. It's very hard to see. And I'll get in there with the pliers and just kind of get those two to be friends. Get a little bit of flux on there. We'll get some solder on it. That's all it takes right there. You got it. You got to be careful. This cases are printed from NGen, which is like a higher temp PLA, so it'll do okay, but it's not going to hold up to a soldering iron. But regular PLA gets soft at a pretty low temperature. I had actually some problems with my switch crackers, actually one time, where in transit in the summer, one of them got squashed in the mail because it had actually gotten soft in the mail truck sitting in the heat. And that mail truck had to be hot because that takes about 140 degrees Fahrenheit for that to happen, which is substantial, you know. Okay, looks like I totally screwed that up. Yep, that's soldered to the wrong one. I soldered to the short lead, which is not what I wanted. So that was El Domo, and we're going to go ahead and just pop that back off and flip it over. It's really no big deal. Just makes my video a little longer. The only other thing with LEDs is they're heat sensitive. You don't want to keep heat on them very long. So when you can help it, how did that get flipped? Anyway, we're just going to do the exact same routine. Try to make sure that's fully seated in the front of the case there. Won't hurt a thing. And I think we got it that time. Yeah, that looks good. So it's not, I'm going to be honest, it's not my prettiest work, but it does get the job done. And done is better than perfect, as they say. So I'm going to trim off the excess, like that. And there we have it. Now, the other LED will connect to this end. Okay, and we're going to do the same process on this one. I'm going to put the short to the inside, the negative to the inside. And we're going to get this roughly in place. And we're going to come back in, set this in. Just going to tweak this until it kind of wants to lay parallel to what's going on here. I'm going to pull the LED out and just trim that lead a little bit. So, come in here and cut it flush to the top end of the case. Come on, cut it. There we go. That'll do, donkey. That'll do. And if you can't tell, I've never actually assembled anything in these cases before. This is my first run at it, so you're learning with me. And, you know, it's not exactly going to be succinct and to the point here. Sorry about that. That's what learning is all about. Okay, that's in place. I'm reasonably certain I have the right lead this time. Get a little flux in there, and we'll be ready to go again. That's it. Okay, now all we have left to do is to connect those two negative leads. I'm going to go ahead and show you what I got here. It's hard to get this thing to focus, I guess, but come up really close. There we go. So I'm going to trim this outside lead off right there. Just go ahead and nip that. Careful not to clip the resistor line. There we go. I wish there was a ground on this end. That would make life a lot easier, but it ain't so, unfortunately. So I probably will use a little bit of heat shrink on the negative line just to make sure these are totally separate from each other. And trying to get a bit of an angle in that red LED's line. Basically, we're going to do two connections here. We're going to solder the two LEDs together, and then we are going to solder a wire to them and run it back to ground back here. There isn't the ground somewhere. Where is it? There's another one on this side. It's really no better. So I'm just going to take that right there, and right where that blob was from before, I'm going to zap these two together. Actually, that's probably a bad idea, because I'm going to need a little bit of flex in these lines. This is a pain, this part. I don't think I like how I'm doing this very much. I may have to come up with a better solution to this bit for the future. There we go. And it's burning my fingers a bit, but oh well. So those two are together. Now all we need to do is get them a wire. So I'm just going to grab some hookup wire. I have Adafruit multi-strand. Actually, is this? No, it's a solid core. That's really what you would want for this anyway. Since it's ground, I'm going to use black, and we only need a piece about an inch long, inch and a half. It's okay to make it a little longer than we need, and we can shorten it up as we go. This end's a bit crimped from the factory here. This is a new pack, so. I'm going to need a little more than that. Come on, Bubba. There we go. So I'll just dip that right in the flux, and we'll come back in here. I'm going to go right to that same spot with this wire. We'll see what happens. That'll flow together really nicely with no effort. That's what I like to see. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a piece of heat shrink, about, make it long enough to cover that whole area. About like that. Fairly small. And we'll just bring it on from this end. Just enough to cover that joint and give it some insulation from the other wires here. So I'm going to grab my heat gun. If I can get it out of here. Sorry, there's a light in the way. There we go. Yes, I know I'm shaking the camera all over the place. I promise I'll get a better camera setup if I keep doing these. And we're going to be careful not to overheat the LEDs. We don't want to destroy anything. Just enough to snug it down where it's not going to take off on us. I'll just let that fall to the floor here. Benefits of having a concrete floor. Alright, so that basically finishes that part. We gotta knock this little end off of here. I'm gonna go ahead and leave some extra on there, and that way we can just kind of squish it under this board as we assemble it. And I'm just going to pre-tin this wire to make sure it wants to grab solder. That's fine. Then we're going to drop that. I'm going to go to the ground on the opposite side, and that way everything's nicely separated. So we're going to put that through there. Sorry, I know you can't see what I'm doing here. I have to be able to read these little tiny words on here. Okay, so ground is right there. It's the second pin from the end. That's the same ground that works with the reset pin. So if you've never really dealt with Pro Micros and flashing them, you'll quickly learn that if you have flashed it more than once, you have to use the reset and ground pins have to be shorted to each other right when you turn it on, and that puts it back in bootloader mode so you can load a new program onto it. It's a bit of a trick. You have to work really fast. It's probably the best way to do it is to set up a breadboard with an actual micro little push button switch, and but you can just use a bent paper clip, whatever you have on hand, jumper wire, anything. Whatever gets the job done. And that is that. Just make sure that looks good. Yeah, I think we're okay there. So we can now nip off these long leads from the resistors. And I do leave a good little nub there. It's not like I'm taking this all the way down to the bottom. There's no point. I mean, make it too short, you're only hurting yourself, basically. And then I'm going to crush this flat. So basically this is going to get pushed perfectly flat. And we don't want that interfering with our layout here. I may not have left enough space for these to separate. So I might have to move this heat shrink it down if I can. Yeah, it's moving. That's good. Just going to slide that down and give them some room. And that way we can kind of separate our LEDs again. You might actually have to trim it. This is the stuff you run into when you do things the first time. If I decide to do more of these, I'll end up making a jig is what will happen. Okay, so red one's basically in place, green one's not even close. Let's see how we're lining up to the case here. Oh, I forgot about that. There's a little tab here in the bottom of the case to work around. Ugh, that sucks. Oh, let me think for a second. What am I gonna do? Well, that's right in the way, so that ain't gonna work. I have to figure out a new way to package that. Or I could just cut a little slit in it. They're not too far off. It's not too bad. If I just knock a little bit out of that center support there, basically that's just there to hold the end of the Pro Micro flat against the case on that end. And so that, I think if I just basically take my Dremel, knock a little bit of a hole out of that. I have the world's largest cutting wheel in here right now, but I'm too lazy to change it. We'll see how that does. I'm guessing it probably doesn't need to be perfect. Pretty good is going to be plenty. I think if I get in there with a pair of pliers and squeeze those together a bit, we'll be in business. Not quite. Maybe I need to rethink this. I'll go ahead and remove I'm just cutting off some more of this heat shrink. What I'll do in the future is I'll run those two directly together horizontally like this way, flat, and then hook a wire this way and run it down the side. That probably would have been a lot cleaner. Probably could still do it if I felt motivated. We'll see if I can get it to work this way, and if not, we'll just redo it. I got nothing else to do tonight. Down. All right, let's see if this fits now. That's better. That's mostly laying in place, but I don't know if the case is going to close. I guess there's only one way to find out. Now normally, you know, the minute you put something together without testing it, it will be broken, I guarantee it. So chances are something's going to need adjustment because that's just how life is. But I'm going to go ahead and close it up because I also like to live dangerously. Now, what am I stuck on now? Trying to see here. Something's in my way. Because I have test fit the Pro Micro in there many times and it works fine. Am I on a wire? Is that what's happening? Yeah, I'm on the red wire. So what we need to do is, now if I hadn't made that mistake when I cut it earlier, see, this is where this stuff gets you. If I hadn't messed up cutting it earlier, I could have moved that all out to the right hand side there, no problem. But because I did, I don't have enough slack left, and things are tight. Alright, we're getting close. There we go. So, I'm just going to take a risk and go ahead and smoosh this together. Something's not quite lining up here. I think we're still just too high in the back. But it doesn't really look like much is in the way. Using the blunt edge of the knife to move things to the center here. I don't know if there's just too much height there with that. Heat shrink or what, but something isn't jiving. I think maybe I need to make the bottom of the case about 1 millimeter deeper. Well, we're awfully close, but it's definitely resisting. In this case, they snap together really nicely when things are packaged properly. It's bending this up really hard, so I know it's not sitting flat enough. So we're going to do the same thing here. I'm just going to go ahead and take about half that off. So I took about half that post off just to make some space. And that might help us get this closed without too much more trouble. And it definitely helped. Still doesn't want to sit flat. It's not. It's just the bottom isn't going down as far as it should. Like this Pro Micro should be sitting lower in the bottom here. And since it's not, everything is a little bit pinched. I think I'm losing is what's happening here. Well. Man, it's so close too. It's like, we're talking like 1 millimeter or less. And why is the Pro Micro should be sitting in front of that bar that's in the back of the case there that I was having trouble with, but it's sitting on top of it instead, and I don't know why that is. I didn't change the dimensions of anything, so it shouldn't have moved. Where's my other bottom? I had another one here as a backup. This should sit flush there. Let me grab another Pro Micro. I got one over here on the bench. See, so the way this should fit Yeah, see, something may have shifted in my file or something here. I'm like a millimeter too short. And on my earlier iteration of the case, it definitely fit properly. So I don't know what moved. I'm going to have to go back and look at my file. It's not even the millimeter. It's like a half a millimeter too short. And so that sucks. But what are you going to do? All right. Well, I'll tell you what we're going to do. First thing we're going to do is cut this post off. This is how we roll. Watch this shit. Problem solved. Okay. Now, the question is it deep enough, even with that, for everything to lay low enough for it all to fit together? I'm going to guess and say it is, but until we try it here, there's just no telling. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to separate these wires. They're making a big lump on that side of the case, and that's not working. So we're going to separate them like this and try and get that reduced. Make a little more space vertically. It's pretty tight, and that's good. I wanted it to be nice and compact, but if it's so compact nothing fits, it's not really helping. So, can we get this thing closed? Nuh-uh. What am I stuck on? I think too the center support is too tall. Okay. So I think I may have made some errors when I made the last updates to this case. But then that's what rapid prototyping is all about. Hey, there we go. That's looking a little better. It's mostly together, so like you can see the LEDs fit really nicely in that spot. This is a little more recessed than it ought to be here, and it's not quite wanting to close, and I'm not sure what that's about. I have a feeling something moved and all my references are about a half a millimeter taller than they're supposed to be. Oh, I launched it. There we go. So let's just see if this case will fit together with nothing else in it. Okay, it does. And can I get it back apart? That's a good question. Yeah, okay. So, what's keeping us from closing that up then? Becomes the issue. One piece of solder is maybe a little taller than the rest. Just knock that down. Now it's about even with the USB. What I'll do is I'm going to make the case about, I don't know, 2 millimeters taller. And that will solve all this, fitment problems. And then maybe I'll do another video. We'll do another one, show the update of how things go when you take a second stab at it. The front of this doesn't want to close up with the Pro Micro inside, and I'm guessing it's just that the spacing of the PCB is just it's just too tight. Doesn't like it. I'm trying to look inside. I don't see anything interfering. Certainly it's not the height of things coming off the board. I think it's just in the front here. There's two shoulders in there that are designed to pinch the PCB to hold it in place. These right here. And they're just not having it. It could be too that my other Pro Micro that I tested with was a different variant. It's looking like things are just really, really slightly off. So I'm just going to nip these corners out a little bit. on both sides. And I'm just taking a hair off, like not anything drastic. I want it to still fit nice and tight. Okay, that's pretty good. Let's try that. Because this should sit deep down and flat there, and it's just not quite making it. A little concerned at the depth on the connector here too. I think the case probably needs to be thinner on that front edge. I don't want to find out later that it doesn't want to cooperate. Most of it I'm really happy with. I think we're very close. Hey, that's better. I mean, it's good enough for tonight, just as a proof of concept. So, there's our assembled unit. It's a little stubbier than I expected, but really that's nice. It looks slick, you know. So let's, can we fire it up here? I do have a keyboard. I don't know that I have a USB, mini USB connector cable here. Let me see if I have one in the drawer here. I thought I might have. Nope. Naturally. I'm going to pull my mic and go find one. Bear with me. Okay, I have returned. I got a cable. It's a lousy one. This cable was damaged. The end's a little crooked and it's a little bent up, but it did work. The main reason I put it in storage was because I was using it for an Xbox controller, and just moving the controller around sometimes it would lose connection, which is not great. But for this, should be plenty. Okay. That's plugged in. Now, I also have here, and I'll just bring her under the camera, an absolutely filthy Model M. Kind of a cool one though. It obviously came out of like a CNC room somewhere. It's got buttons for CNC, macro, all kinds of geometric shapes, a parameter button, who knows what all, the pause, loop, and lots of dirt. It's definitely got some character, let's say. I'm going to clean it up at some point, get her going, might even bolt mod it, we'll see. I got a pile of these things I got to go through. In any case, we're going to bring this up and see if it does anything. Okay, we are plugged in, no problem there. Praying to God we don't explode something. Nothing so far. I don't know, maybe something maybe out of whack because of how I squashed that together. That's very possible. Or it could be that the Pro Micro is moving instead of making contact with the cable, because I cut that tab off. Not really the smartest move. This has been a total disaster, honestly. Let's just pop that case open. Like I said, it never works right if you try and close it up. That's just the rules. That is hard to open. Just gonna put my pliers in the end of it and pop it. There we go. So we'll open it back up, make sure we haven't made any mistakes. Nothing's touching. No, everything looks okay. I'm going to plug it in directly while it's not in the case here, and we'll see what happens. I'll tell you what happens. Nothing. Why nothing? Even if the keyboard wasn't working, we should get something on the Pro Micro. Switched USB ports there. Like I said, this cable is rancid. It's bad. That's a bummer. I don't really trust this cable though. I'm gonna go find another one. I know where I have one upstairs. It's gonna take me a minute to go get it, but I don't think there's anybody watching anyway, so what does it matter? I shall return. Back. Let's see here. Not a better cable. One that works. Stole off one of my Raspberry Pis. Hook my mic back up. Alright, let's fire this buggy up again. Come on, Schwartz. Hey, and we're lit. See that? Easy. Now, we have probably the numlock light is on. Yeah, I can see it on the keyboard. Okay, so we have, I'm going to move this in a little bit so you can see here the numlock is lit. Numlock is lit here. There we go. It's switching like it should. Happy day. Now, not scroll lock, caps lock. Perfect. Red is lit. She works. We are in business. Now the next step would be to take the keyboard, do a type test on one of the online testers, and see what works and what doesn't. But for right now, we're going to button this up, and then we'll come back with a revised case design and get it in a new case once I get a chance to make some edits. But right now what we'll do is we'll just close this up. We'll do another one of these in a night or two, and should go a lot smoother. So we'll see. Because what I can do is I'll bring the negative together right here in the center, and then run a wire out here to this corner and down, and that will have lots more room then. And I can keep that center post intact, and that will help keep everything together. I gotta double check the distance on this center post. Really, it's not a big deal to leave that long and trim it to fit each time, and that way you always have a nice snug situation there, but it'd be nice to get it really close that you're not fussing with it. So there we have it. A functional Soarer's converter. Took a lot longer than I expected, but there you have it. Look at that. That looks nice. See if I can get the camera to focus up on here. There we go. So there's our Soarer's converter. Hit that num lock. What, now you're gonna not do it? It's possible that when I put it in the case, something's getting pinched. Well, the LED, or the Pro Micro has moved way back into the case, which is not great. There we go. Just need it replugged in, I think. So there we have it. Num lock, caps lock, num lock, both working properly. We got our lights. The red is quite a bit brighter than the green, which kind of annoys me. What I would probably do is switch to a higher value resistor, because you don't really need them bright, especially if you're going to have it in a dark room. It'll be annoying. So they just barely need to show. I would probably double the value of that red resistor. We could test that on the workbench and get them about even, and then you'll know what to use when you go to put it together. And that way they're nice and balanced and look cool. So this is a good first step. To, you know, really, I mean, considering this is literally my first run through on this, that's not too bad at all. And we can take this, go back, make some changes, and it'll be just about perfect. I'm just going to make the case about, like I said, 2 millimeters taller, maybe 3. And that way there'll be a little more room inside to play with wires and things. And then I'll adjust the spacing around the Pro Micro again. I had it perfect. The first one I printed, it snapped in exactly perfect. So obviously I made a mistake somewhere between that version and this one. But otherwise I think I'm really happy with it. Looks really good. I was thinking about maybe adding some like ribs inside that opening where the wire goes in so that it doesn't want to pull. I was just going to glue it, but it would be cool if it actually pinched it and didn't let it move as much, but at the same time that's going to try and hold the case open, so it's kind of a trade-off. Probably best to just hit it with like some hot glue or something as you're closing it up, or even super glue, be fine. Just something to keep it in place so that it doesn't want to pull out on you. I could also, you know, what you could do really is you could extend the case and do a zigzag inside there, but that's like a lot of work for really no gain, and then you got to move your LEDs and stuff. Nah. Probably the way would just be to hit it with a little bit of glue as you're closing it up, and don't worry about it. And I mean just a little. You just don't want it to pull, that's all. So there we have it. That's cool. Let me see if this... I don't have it set up yet for screen capture, which I could probably do quickly, but I'm not really prepped, so I'm not going to bother. What I would like to do, though, is just bring up a, like, you know, notepad. And just see if this thing does anything. Nothing. So let's see here. Well, clearly it's getting the signals from the keyboard because the lights are doing their thing. I have no idea the condition of this board. It may just be shot. Yeah, that's working. There we go. Let's see what we got. This is the first time this thing has typed in years, all caps. So, this mostly works. Numpad is not too bad. Actually, it feels good. It feels fairly crisp. I'm wondering if maybe this sat in a really dirty spot and didn't get used a whole lot. Because really the keys feel good. They're crisp and like fresh feeling. And the other thing that I noticed is that all of them, out of all the keys here, only about 3 of them are showing actual wear from fingertips. So like You can't really see it here. Maybe I can move the camera out. So like these are all, you know, the legends are perfect. This one is used. This one is used right here. Obviously that one got some use. Enter obviously has a little bit. But even the space bar, there's like no finger wear on this. I don't think this was used to type. It was probably just used to control a machine once in a while. Like, you know, the escape button, you can see a little bit of a fingerprint there. Everything else is like totally unused. So I'm thinking that with a cleanup, this might actually be a really nice board. We'll see what happens. But yeah, I think it'll be cool to check it out with the lid off and see where it's at. I mean, I can just pull one of these keycaps and just take a look, but boing, that was cool. It was like things moving. The barrels look really good. I mean, that's not bad at all. It looks like basically the dirt comes right up to the top of the barrel and then there's nothing inside, so that's cool. Gently replace that. Model M goodness, ready to go. So that's it for tonight. I'll come back with a revised version in a night or two, and we'll try this again with the other cord and see how it goes. And hopefully we'll have a little more luck and it'll go together perfect the first time. I might also come up with I might make a jig for soldering those LEDs so that there's no question, at least for the bridge between the negatives, that it's correct. So I'm going to make essentially a square with holes facing down the right distance apart. We'll put the LEDs in, bend the pins over, solder them, put the wire on them, trim everything, and then move it over onto the Pro Micro. And that way everything is fitted as tight as it can possibly be, and we don't have to worry about it, you know, taking up any more room than it absolutely has to. And also that'll make everything a little bit more rigid so that when we move it on the Pro Micro, we're going to know that everything is laying the way it's supposed to. And then it'll just be a matter of soldering up the positive leads again. The resistors in that position worked really well, I think. Like, that was cool. And, you know, that seemed to work well, just soldering them right in the case like that. So, yeah, we might be okay there. And, you know, when that tab is in there holding the board forward, it won't be pushing the board in like that. So that problem will be gone. And also with that tab in place, we shouldn't have any interference with these wires from the main cord coming in, because it sits level with the PCB. Okay, so like, you know, it should hold the PCB forward like this and just sit level with it. So those wires should come right over the top there, no problem. So I think we'll be in business. We'll do a second version of this. In fact, I'm just going to mark this V1, and that way V1. We'll come back with the V2 rocket and see what kind of damage we can do with that. So thanks for watching my second stream ever. I'm sure it was a rambling mess, but that's how you get better at things. And I hope to do a lot more keyboard stuff in the future here, just for something to do. And if you have any questions, feel free to comment. I'll be happy to answer. And if you have any ideas how to improve things, let me know. I'm not afraid to take criticism. And certainly I'll be happy to update the design and make it work. I'm going to share it with everybody, so if you want to make one of these, you're welcome to it. And I might even make little kits up and sell them on my website. We'll see if anybody has any interest. And, you know, a couple bucks to stock the parts, no big deal. So, thanks for watching. Good night. How do I turn it off? It's right here. Okay, going for real this time. So long.